Moses ben Maimon, more commonly known as Maimonides, was one of the most influential Torah scholars of the medieval period. His 13 principles of the Jewish faith are still foundational. Maimonides was very concerned with demonstrating the reasonableness of faith, as we'll see in his critique of how people read scriptures. In this reading, he asks, what does the believer want? A Messiah, a paradise on earth, an afterlife? Well, people have very different answers to this question of what they want out of faith. Maimonides offers a few guesses. He says, quote, they want to know whether they will be naked or clothed, or whether they will be raised in shrouds in which they were buried, or with the same embroidery or style, or the beauty of sewing, or in a plain garment which covers their bodies. Or they'll ask, when the Messiah comes, will there be rich men and poor men, weak men and strong men, and other similar questions. Abraham, the patriarch of Judaism, shows one faithful root of what to hope for in faith. Maimonides said, Abraham served God out of love. So he said that there were three ways that people basically interpret the sages of the scriptures. He says that there are first literalists who believe the sages, folly and poor in knowledge, as he says. Literalists who think the sages are stupid. They imagine their own intelligence of a higher order than that of the sages, and what the sages were just simpletons who suffered from some sort of inferior intelligence. Members of this group are so pretentiously stupid that they can never gain genuine wisdom, he writes. And then finally, there are those who recognize a profound depth to the sages and recognize that they are speaking in analogy and metaphor. So notice that these 13 principles, while you're reading them, they're mostly qualities of God or the importance of Torah, which cannot be added to or subtracted from. And then the 13th, interestingly, is resurrection of the dead, which is a rather late addition to Jewish thought. Secondly, our second reading is going to look at a particular creation myth that's really a central organizing myth out of Kabbalah. Kabbalah is Jewish mysticism that comes to maturity in the medieval period as well, and plays upon older Jewish thought with additions involving very creative reinterpretations. There was this book called the Zohar, which is the name to this prominent thought in mystical tradition. The Zohar influenced one of the most prominent figures in Kabbalah thought, a guy called Rabbi Isaac ben Solomon Luria, more commonly just known as Luria, a 16th century mystic. My paper on his doctrine of Tikkun Olam will give you the basics of his thinking, but this involves a creation myth in which a character called the Ein Sof, a sort of God before God, or God, a sort of a prior foundation out of which God springs. This sort of God behind God, or prior God, it was comprised of 10 vessels, or sephirot, 7 of which fall into the universe and shatter the remnants or shards of God across the universe, or the cosmos. So in Luria's thinking, in this myth, following God's command was a way to bring these shards back together, to Tikkun Olam, to repair or mend the world, what was broken at the beginning. So this mending, we get this term Tikkun Olam. In the Hebrew Bible, Olam means something like eternity. But by the time of Luria, though, it meant something more like cosmos or world. So Tikkun means mend or repair. That is, mending or repairing those shattered vessels, those sephirot, which contain the qualities of God and scattered across the universe. So, to put it all together, Tikkun Olam prioritized following God's commands as a way to repair the world. That is what Tikkun Olam means. By the way, the word for God's commandment is mitzvah. The plural is mitzvot. So when you see the term mitzvah in my paper, it's about following God's commands. That's what mitzvah means. So to mend or repair the world by following God's command, this is the object of Jewish faith according to Kabbalah. Meaning the emphasis is not on correct belief, but more to the point, correct belief will correspond to healing of the world. For the simplest example, the command to rest on Sabbath is a way to create a break in our work schedule, which makes the world a bit better. Outside of Kabbalah, narrowly construed, Tikkun Olam became an incredibly influential idea in mainstream Jewish thought, and even guides activism to this day. As we'll see later with Jewish thinkers, many of whom have no clear belief in God at all, even the Jewish atheist thinker often remains committed to this drive to mend or repair the world.